Welcome and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. Welcome to another edition of FlashTube, Service Supply Chain Educational Series. This is just, anywhere from short form, 5 minutes up to an hour of, Flash and other subject matter experts and people inside of the service supply chain just sharing knowledge about what we know and trying to address challenges and questions that you guys have along the question or along your journeys, right? So many of you are in different stages, whether you're just maybe a growing company still doing a lot of your own service logistics support and growing, or maybe you're a Fortune 5 enterprise who's looking to maybe change partners or move to a more advanced solution. Either way, we're glad you're here. So a couple housekeeping things. You guys know the drill on webinars like this. We'll put you guys on mute, but you can always unmute yourself to ask a question at any time. If you put your mouse to the bottom of the screen or hover it around, you'll see there's a Q&A function. There's also a chat function. So if you don't want to ask a question out loud, you're more than welcome to type one, and we will address it as they come. And of course, if you want to interrupt us at any time, we love it. And if not, enjoy your cup of coffee or beverage or whatever you got this morning, and we'll jump right in. So just a little bit about us. So those of you who've been on our webinars before, you know me. I'm the Vice President of Marketing. As I mentioned earlier, I hail from Colorado here. Strange facts about me. I used to be a former fly fishing guide. I did it for about 10 years in many of the great places of the United States and different parts of the world. And, really fell in love with marketing and growing that business. So that kind of helped me really spark a fire to go into other businesses and industries and things like that. Young family, and I would say our most recent claim to fame as a family, we clocked in about 430,000 vertical feet of skiing this past season. So we were up there quite a bit, and great to watch the little kids running around and doing their thing up there. And then our subject matter expert, Mr. Dennis Moniz, who's our Senior Vice President of Integrations at Flash. And Dennis, I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure thing. Thanks, Ryan. Hey, everyone. My name is Dennis Moniz. As Ryan mentioned, I've been at Flash since we had our very first customers. It's 26, 27. I lose track of the years. It's been such a long time. One of the notable things about me when I was younger, I went to a vocational high school and I was going to be a carpenter. Then I decided, nope, I think I want to go to college and I want to be a lawyer. So I went to college and I'm studying, and I decided to take programming classes with my electives, and I just found it to be interesting and fun. And then suddenly I'm having a career in technical development and programming. So a little bit different path to get there, but here I am 30 something years later.
And Dennis, I can't let you go without telling us a little bit about your Hollywood dealings.
Yeah, one of the things I did when I got out of college, I actually got a job writing some software for a music producer. His name is Maurice Starr, and he produced New Kids on the Block and New Edition and all these groups back in the late 80s, I think. I got a job doing that, and eventually, from working at that, keeping track of all the expenses and touring, I became a road manager, doing all the data entry and the software that I wrote. And then I kept going, and because I had some musical background, I suddenly was executive producer of an album that was produced on Hollywood Records, and co-directed a music video that was rated #1 on Video Jukebox in those days, which is not even a channel anymore, I believe. That's quite funny. That's how long ago that was. So I've had done some different things not related to anything I started out wanting to be as a carpenter. So it's interesting. A lot of fun, though, I could say.
So I would say Dennis is probably the least typical kind of IT programmer guy you will ever meet. And one of the most fun that I've ever hung out with. So very glad you're here this morning, Dennis. Thanks for being here.
That's great. Mm-hmm.
So very quickly, guys, just so you know who we are a provider of the service supply chain solutions. This isn't going to be a big sales pitch or anything. We just want to give you some context about who we are, what we do, how it works, all these things. But ultimately, if you see up here in the upper left-hand corner, really it starts with your brand, right? Your brand has, a promise, and that promise is always to, of course, create, innovative, wonderful, really cool high-tech things that your end customers depend on. That dependency, of course, creates urgency if something goes wrong. And that's really where we come in, right? So you see the world down here. We ultimately distribute your spare parts to, places in every corner of the world nearest your install base, right? So we can help you hit those SLAs that if you're not used to it, delivering against those SLAs may seem impossible, right? 2-4 hour next business day around the world kind of stuff. So we're very much centered on that world. Moving down the chart here, of course, you've got, an account manager who really is excellent at bringing all the components of your business and our solutions together, so you don't have to deal with 5 different points of contact, 5 different contracts, all the mess that really does exist out there in some of our competitive sets. And then really moves over to a piece of technology that Mr. Moniz knows exceptionally well. I commonly refer to Dennis as the Godfather of FlashTrac. It is what it is, Dennis. Just take it.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's great. Thank you, Ryan. I had been very fortunate to having worked at Flash for so long. And when we started with a single customer, we were doing spreadsheets, 3-ring binders, and keeping track of orders and inventory, etc. Then we moved on to some systems, courier systems and that type of thing, trying to keep track of inventory. So I had done that when I came to Flash. And then as we started to grow and add customers, the courier systems wouldn't support, the business so well. So we looked at different software that we could utilize. And one of the key things with the amount of customers that we had was that everyone was handling their business slightly differently. And using different systems. So there was no one system that I could use that would replicate all the different customers that we had. So at that time, we decided that we would build a system ourselves that could be flexible and scalable and allow us to handle the business for various customers in different systems that they worked on. We'll talk a little bit later about that in specific in relationship to systems and SAP, Oracle, etc. But this kind of was the background in terms of building the system and designing it from the ground up to be flexible and scalable.
Yeah. And to Dennis, to kind of summarize what Dennis is saying, FlashTrac was built for you. It was built with the customer in mind. It was built based on those needs. It's not a system that, started as an ERP and now has a breakout version that handles your spare parts logistics. That's its core thing. And, quite frankly, we're pretty proud of it and love being able to talk about it and answer questions. So once, everything's processed, all your order management, inventory management, everything that happens inside of FlashTrac, of course, then it goes over to the ability to being able to dispatch, spare parts around the world. And of course, if you've joined any of our other webinars and, know a little bit about us, we have a lot of different value-added services. Again, just really what we kind of like to say is sort of the OEM's best friend, right? So if you're making, again, if you're a manufacturer, or if you're even a value-added reseller, things like that, we make it really easy. Because most of the things that you need are under one roof around the world. And then, of course, all those things come together to be simply delivered to your customer. So that's us in a nutshell. Even tighter nutshell, we just want you to keep one thing in mind. If you're struggling with a variety of, the spare parts logistics, service parts, or service supply chain, whatever you want to call it, there is a simple solution. Right? You don't have to have all these different fragmented parts of your business if you don't want to. But of course, for some people, it works really well. So enough about us for now. So where we're headed today, obviously, if you're here, you've seen the invitations and things like that, but really it's about B2b messaging and integration, right? So it's this whole portal to automation within your service supply chain. So a couple things we're going to cover, and ways orders can be placed, right? We'll look at really the two main ways that people do orders today. And what we're always surprised by and love hearing it is sometimes even relatively large organizations, right? 10, 15, $20 billion shops are doing things kind of how Dennis talked about it earlier, spreadsheets and three-ring binders. So we'll get into that. What it is and how it works, right? So if you're very well versed in all this stuff, it might be a little rehash, but really we want to make sure anybody who doesn't know that you've got level ground to stand on, so we can have great conversations about it. How it can save you time, and of course help avoiding errors, right? You can imagine spreadsheets, three-ring binders, and a lot of human error components there. And then how it can help you make money, right? That's what we're all here to do. So we want to make sure we talk about that. So with that, I will let Dennis take us down a couple of paths.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, some of the things that we've gone through, and especially doing this for quite some time, is going through the different methods that orders can be placed, right? So you get phone calls, emails, that still happens today, as well as the FlashTrac system that can allow you to enter your customer portal and be able to enter orders directly yourself. The challenges here with these methods, any one of these that you have here, is that typically it will require dual entries, especially on the customer part. So what does that mean? So you get to enter, you take a call from a technician in your call center, have someone place the order on their system, then they'll turn around and log into FlashTrac and place the order in the FlashTrac system, whether it's that or it's a phone call. So you take the call, enter it in your system, place a phone call to the Flash call center, repeat everything that you've just done, so addresses and parts, etc., and taking the time to place an order with the Flash staff. And the same in terms of email. Obviously not efficient for sure, right? So it would require you, if you thought about it in terms of the amount of time that you spend to place an order, and roughly in our time studies at Flash, it takes a little bit over 2 minutes to place an order. If you were doing volumes in terms of 20,000 orders a day, 20,000 orders a week, 20,000 orders a month, depending on your size, you could just do the math and figure out every time for Flash you added a customer, how many people you'd need to support that. So we quickly figure out that these methods, whether it's repetitive, allowing the customer to enter orders into FlashTrac, or phone calls or emails, it's extremely not sufficient and not scalable. You want to go to your next slide here. All right, great. So with all that said, and with understanding in terms of the manual methods of setting things up, we looked at the system automation. Now, we started B2b many years ago with one of our multi-billion-dollar companies. We were the first 3PL vendor to do a B2B integration with them using Rosetta Net. In terms of system automation, it obviously then reduces the redundancy of your staff having to enter orders into your system, enter orders into the Flash system. So we're talking about labor savings for sure, and that applies to both. So why does this work well as a partnership between a customer and Flash? Because it allows us as well as the customer to be scalable. It's just not adding volume and sales and revenue generation and allowing your services to grow, your warranty support to grow, and then the volumes increase. And like I said previously, if you were to just do the math, you could figure out at whatever level of volume, whether it's 100 orders a day, 200, 5,000, 10,000, you could do the math on the amount of time it takes to place an order and figure out as you grow how many staff you need to add onto to support that. And then of course the problem with that is that you're just adding volume and just adding labor, and you're just growing to just keep the same margins of profit that you would whether you were small or large. So there's no benefit there to growing if you can't find a way to be able to reduce costs. This for sure is one way to do that. One of the things that we talk about when we talk about the B2B integrations and the success and the efficiency and the cost, and that's great. Some of the other things that drive costs are what errors that happen, errors that occur. Emails get sent, somebody typed something wrong, you're on a call, I thought I heard you say 5 and not a 2, and I typed an S instead of a 5, and I had the address wrong, and I didn't get the spelling of the name correct, and all these variations on issues that can occur doing things manually, and then of course repeating those. It's kind of like you have the conversation that you sit in a circle and you say something to the first person, they pass along, by the time you get to the end it's quite different. We look at that as the same as being a manual functioning company in terms of sending orders over, sending ASNs over, receiving inventory, providing reports back, someone sitting there manually entering all the data and all the receipts into their system, etc. There's just a large area of inefficiency with doing it that way. And again, through costs and through efficiency, through data integrity suffers quite a bit when you intervene with these manual processes that we have.
So Dennis, we've kind of looked at, obviously we have sort of the manual way, which really does come down to spreadsheets. Typically one person at a time is more effective doing that anyway, so you can't really have multiple people working on it. If you do, it has to be even more coordinated. And obviously now we have things where it's, of course it's scalable, supports multi-user. You can also access it anywhere in the world at any time on any of your devices, things like that. Can you just walk through a little example kind of a customer you may have worked with that kind of was the outdated method, and then how you helped them get to the systematic way, and then, kind of what was the result?
Sure, absolutely. There's quite a few. So we have over 60 B2B integrations with customers today, which is great. And they vary in terms of types of integrations. So we have a broad range of solutions that we can comply with a customer. One of the things that comes to my mind is a customer that went out and sold a service which was quite interesting. So it was a service with a customer that was to track a multi-billion-dollar company that was selling kits to a large customer internationally. The problem is that their system was not set up to handle kits. So they were shipping product out, 3 products in a box, which was a single part. But the problem was they could only tell us that they were shipping us 3 individual parts. And then when they wanted to, and of course they had serial numbers. So when they wanted to ship to the customer, they had to ship the serial numbers that were in the one box. But when they were going to send us messaging, they couldn't tell us what 3 serial numbers were grouped together. So there was quite a challenge. So we worked on a B2B integration for the customer. And what we were able to do was, when the products came in, we were able to group them within our system and assign a unique number to them. And then what they did was, when they sent us an order, a B2B order, we would look at the products that were there, and we would then select a group of products based on our grouping and be able to pick the one box that had the 3 pieces contained inside it with the correct serial numbers, and be able to report that back for warranty support to the customer and ship the product out. There was no way possible that we could have done this manually. We tried to think of how could we do this, how could we support this, with these, the variations and everything on the customer system listed as a single part, but they were actually in single boxes, 3 parts. So the solution was a B2B solution. And what it did was, it's quite interesting actually. With the B2B solution, you're talking about 90-minute deliveries, international, that we perform 100% on time. with this solution, month over month, and that is in Japan. We have over 200 locations, and it's a great result and a great improvement. There would be no way possible that we would be able to support this warranty support contract in 90 minutes. Definitely not manually. And definitely without a customized B2B solution that could help support this misconfiguration of selling a service that didn't exist. So there's tremendous benefits to be had by B2B integrations, and not only just straightforward B2B integrations, but certainly in cases like this that we're able to do some customized solution and help the customer out with a problem that was tremendous problem, selling a contract that large to one of the largest, well, the largest telephone company in Asia.
Yeah. So, earlier we just talked about, your brand, and your brand is a promise, right? So the sales team or the support team obviously came up with a great solution on the, the customer side. So again, this is a multi-billion-dollar networking hardware company. And then the promise is, man, if something breaks, if something goes wrong, or we need to fix something, the promise is we're going to get it there. But they couldn't really come through on that promise, right? So that's really the main message here, is there are ways to do this, right? And Flash isn't the only one with this sort of integration. So our advice to you is just do some homework, right? Look around, see what the options are, see what it takes to get there, because it's a game changer, right? It's a major game changer.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So we'll move in a little bit. I can advance the slides. There we go. Right. So what is it? How does it work? Now we've told you a little bit about, okay, there's these things over here, but really, what is it? How does it work? And that's our best graphic ever.
Quite simple.
You need to know right here.
One to any. And this goes back to the beginning conversation that we had in terms of I was mentioning about SAP and Oracle and all the various systems that we were working with when we were beginning, and we had multiple customers, but nobody had the same system and the processes were different. And so that became a challenge for us. So part of the entire FlashTrac scope and build around logistics services and warranty support, like Ryan had mentioned. And one of the key things was being able to be this one system that could talk to anybody and do anything with anyone. That's the luxury that the B2B today provides us. If you look back on the history, you'll see that certainly when I was beginning, we had what they were called VANs, so value-added networks, and how you shared information with one another was that you got a subscription to a van, and a customer sent you an EDI file, and they sent it to the van, and then you had to go pick it up from the van, and it's in the cloud somewhere, and you had a subscription, and then you would create the answers on your system and process everything and send information back, and it would go to the van, and then the customer would come up and pick out of the folder and take their files back, and so it's a long process. Certainly if we look back and talk about the 90-minute delivery requirement in Japan, not possible. Everything was scheduled and batched, and nothing was near real time. So with that came the advent of more XML, and that's really where XML came in and said, hey, why don't we begin sharing information directly with one another? And then all these disparate systems, doesn't matter which one you have, we can extract data, put it in this XML format, and send it to anyone else. So you had a real big push on that in the early stages with the Rosetta Net and the companies that were part of that group, out of California. And we did the first Rosetta Net integration with one of the billion-dollar companies that was part of the Rosetta Net consortium. We were the let's call it the guinea pig. So we did that, and that was great. So it changed things because the van was gone, and we were talking directly with one another, and moving the information back and forth in near real time. Then as things grew a bit more, right? So we got into more web services, a little bit more more efficient, more posting data quickly, allowing us in our system to be open to you to push data. And no matter what customer was pushing the data, and the amount of data that they needed or the information that they needed could be various, and we could provide a web service that said, hey, you don't need to use all 800 pieces of information to send us. You could use 750, and someone else could use 700, and someone else could use 600. So we provide the web services to allow customers to do that. So when we look in terms of a one-to-any, doesn't really matter anymore what system you have. We're now capable, and certainly quite easily, to be able to talk to one another and exchange information. So that's the great benefit of the evolution of the B2B.
So simply put, I mean, this is very similar to how you guys are using, a lot of your different platforms today. Basically, it's an API call, right? It's just bidirectional, always talking to one another. And again, you get, real-time visibility, and you have real-time data and metrics. And we didn't talk a whole lot about that yet, but really the reporting side of things, when you move to an automated process, is incredibly valuable, right? There's a whole lot of things you'll be able to tell, make sure that you have the right amounts of inventory. In many cases, having too much inventory, obviously, as you guys know, is a major cost, right? It's a major asset on the books that you don't need. Obviously, having too little, then you may not be able to support your customers. So the reporting is another huge feature that anybody who goes to sort of this automated platform benefits greatly from. So I'll just introduce this real quick, Dennis, but really this is an example of some of the things Dennis was talking about, right? So the one, FlashTrac, and we didn't use this one because obviously it's ours, but there are other platforms out there. You do not have to necessarily look in Flash's direction. We're just encouraging you to look out there in general, but any of the platforms should be able to connect to almost any other system out there. And again, we just have a couple of examples that many of you probably use today, but if you don't see yours up there, not to worry. As Dennis mentioned, it can connect to pretty much anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point, Ryan. So if you look at this slide here, obviously the major systems, the Oracles, SAPs, Salesforce, that we generally encounter today with most of the customers. But we have customers who also use homegrown systems as well. So that's why you'll see here across the top when you see ANSI, X12, Rosetta Net Web Services, which I had mentioned previously. Those are pretty much the basic integrations that we would do with our customers today. So probably 90%, 95% of our customers have any one of those integrations. We also have flat file integrations for the customers with some homegrown systems that can't build out these services that we would like to use. Don't have the staff, perhaps don't have the budgets to do something like that, but they can produce flat files as an example. So something very, very basic, and maybe FTP those over to us, so directly to us, not with a van. And we certainly can do that as well. So we're quite flexible. Certainly we prefer web services ourselves to be what we consider the most efficient for us, and give us the largest scalability in terms of the customer and the types of customization that we may want to do. Probably one of the bigger things that happens with the B2B integrations is not necessarily just the messages that we use. So we can use, let's pick any one of those, right? So X12, Rosetta Net, and technically they all have messages, standard messages, right? So some names of messages, and they're all structured the same, and everybody can use them. And then sometimes when you look at the integrations that we have the same messages that we use across customers. The differences are the business rules that apply to it. So it's not necessarily just the structure of a message or the technical part, right? So let's map something and let's get into the technicalities. What happens is it's actually on the business side. So that's where the real differences come in. So what does that mean? So that means you can have a customer who says, hey, one customer, I take my service calls, I have my system, I have my Oracle system, I know where my technician is, I know where my inventory is, and I want to tell you where to ship from. And so I'm going to send you a message, and it's going to be a B2b message, and it's going to be some standard message that gives you the ship from location, the FSL location, where you're shipping to, the parts that I need, the serial numbers I need, etc. And great, so it'll be efficient, fast and efficient. And as soon as I create that in my system, you'll get it. Then you may have a different customer who doesn't have the volume of inventory that you would get, you may have with a larger customer. Smaller volume, more scarce part numbers are located throughout the United States, fewer FSL locations, and they'll say, hey, when I take the call into my call center, I want to send you the order. The problem is I'm not really sure where I need to ship from, because I'm going to have inventory scattered all over the place. And I'm not sure that I want to let my call center determine where to ship from. So if I send you the order and I send you the destination and the parts that I need, can you then pick the most efficient location to ship from? And select the location yourself, and again, ship the product out to our end customer. So that would be more a business requirement. So technically we can solve that issue, but certainly it's a business requirement that, hey, I don't have the inventory and the dollar value to support that. I can't do purchasing. I can't just order from my OEM every day, and I don't have a planning system. To be able to stock my inventory based on my service contracts that I have, and failure rates on products, etc. Typical things that you get when you're doing planning. So then we have to, come up with these business requirements and solutions that can support the customer. So although we're using the same messaging, the interaction with the message and the data that's received can vary based on some business requirements and providing solutions back to the customer. Any questions on that piece?
Excuse me. Okay, great.
You okay? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just dying a little, no big deal.
There you go. Yeah, I could see. Yeah.
So in a very tight nutshell, again, we don't want to bombard you with our stuff here, but as you've seen the picture, your data, your requirements come into our system. So our system effectively becomes your system, and it's integrated, right? And because our FlashTrac and our platforms speak service logistics or speak service supply chain, it's all one language. Right, so again, you've got access anywhere you are, whatever you need, and again, multiple people can have access to place orders depending on the size of your team and the needs, and things like that. So we're very proud of what we have, but again, there are others out there. We just encourage you to continue to do some homework and get to we'll call them greener pastures. Anything else on this one, Dennis?
Sure. Yeah, one of the things, and you'll see here from the screen there, it's actually the portal that we had mentioned a little bit earlier in terms of the customer portal and your visibility to all the transactions that are happening, and everything's real time. So everything that happens, shipments and allocations of inventory and inventory on hand, every time you run something within your customer portal, you'll see exactly where things are, and you'll see exactly live transactions that are being placed. Now, one of the things when we talk about ERPs and CRMs, et cetera, and I mentioned a little bit about planning and that type of thing. So when we look overall at B2B integrations and the Flash technology and what we're providing to the customer in these portals is kind of the complete suite of the logistics solutions. So what does that mean? So we have B2B integrations with our customer, which is great, right? So we address, as we mentioned from the beginning, a growing issue in terms of labor and resources and costs and so on in terms of data integrity, etc. One of the things that we do as not only from the logistics warranty support, is that we also provide integrations to planning companies. So we have a great integration with planning that we can provide information, which is transactional information from the FlashTrac system, because everything's real time. And we provide the planning information, which then allows the planning companies to send us replenishments and to store inventory appropriately to support the warranty contracts around the globe. Not only do we have that integration, we also have integrations with repair. So a repair company. So what does that mean? That's, you know, repairing your defective return product. So you'll see product expected to come back in, product comes back in, product ships out to a repair vendor, product comes back in, updated from the repair company, which is great, right? So it gives you that full visibility to the supply chain, not only from just shipping out to a customer, getting their defective back, the defective going to the repair facility, the defective coming back to the repair facility, the information being fed to planning company, and the information coming back from the planning company to replenish the network with the appropriate amount of inventory to support your warranty contracts.
Yep. So Medhat, I know you've got your hand raised, so if you want to unmute yourself, happy to take your question.
My name is Medhat Girgis. I'm from Cairo, Egypt. We are representative of Flash Egypt. I have a question for Dennis and a question for you, actually, Ryan. My question for Dennis, first of all, let me commend you on the software of FlashTrac, because it's a brilliant software and it can serve a multi-purpose for a lot of people. My point here, why we are not able to sell this software locally? Like in Egypt, for example, there's a lot of companies which would need to use the FlashTrac system, but they are not based in the US or they are based in Cairo. And we can help serve them through the FlashTrac, but the pricing must be adapted to the market in Egypt. Did you ever think of that? That's number one. The second part of the question for you, Ryan, to pick my questions for both of you directly, we have made a deal with DHL to ship from anywhere in the world to Egypt, and from Egypt to anywhere in the world in a very, very economical price, express price, which I've sent the list to Flash, because a couple of days ago we were asked to ship a shipment to California for a client, I think it's F5, and we used the client account number or the account number given to us, and the charges came up to be something like $538, while our account, we can do the same exact shipment for $150 or $180 with third of the price. So please consider the prices we got from DHL for this year. It might save a lot and make a lot of profit for Flash as well if they are using our account. And this is my questions.
Okay, great. Yeah, I could address the first part of that. And thank you, Medhat. That's a great question. We have had some discussions, and I'm glad you brought that up. And we will certainly take that back to the ELT group and take a look at that and what possible solutions that we could provide based on the question and the information that you've asked. So I appreciate that, and we certainly will take that back and look at that. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And to your other first question too, as far as like licensing it out to others or being able to allow others to use it that are outside of, let's just say, our network of customers, partners, Flash, all that. In some cases, we do that. In some cases, really though, Medhat, it's not something that we're pushing too hard. It's, for us, we want to make sure we're focused on our core business, right? Which is, of course, is to get parts around the world very quickly using our technology. Obviously, as we continue to grow with our existing, I'll call them customers of just FlashTrac by itself, we are open to that. We are looking at that. I know actually it came up in a conversation last week because somebody else is kind of asking the same question. So, trust that it's something we're definitely interested in and looking at. But as you can imagine, as soon as you get into like the SaaS-based model of business, it's really kind of starts to divert away from our core competencies. But glad you're seeing some of the things we're seeing as well.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Great. So we'll go to the next slide here. Excuse me. All right. So really starting to get to really the meat of it, right? Why should I care? Okay, I kind of heard you guys say it does all these wonderful things. That's nice. But how does it do what I need it to do and make me better?
Mhm. Mhm. Sure thing. We touched on this a little bit previously. So we, in terms of the 90-minute deliveries, actually I had an issue this morning. When you look at the amount of time that it takes to, one, take a call from your customer, number two, contact Flash, number three, have the order entered into Flash, and then four, then send out the part to the warehouse. Then five, the warehouse has to search for, and pick the part out of the warehouse and get everything prepared for delivery. Those times in minutes are critical. And saving every minute that you can allows us to get the deliveries to a location on time. So if you thought of looking at your customer base and from a shipping location, and you said, okay, from this central location, I can reach this customer base in 2 hours based on, doing your measurements, right? And the mapping that we do here at Flash. So we have services that do that as well. That's based on the fact that you're going to get the order within X amount of time, you're going to pick the order within X amount of time, and you can reach these destinations in that time frame. When you're not doing a B2B integration, the amount of time that it takes to do any one of those steps is going to be fluctuating. So what does that mean? That means it's going to take probably a little bit more time to get the order. I'm trying to call and I get the person and they may not, maybe I'm having trouble with the, taking too long, with typing something and I'm not understanding the address or the contact and it's taking, 10 minutes and 15 minutes to do that. You've already lost 15 minutes on a 2-hour delivery that's on the outer edge of your perimeter of serviceable locations. Then you send the order to the warehouse, and the warehouse takes their full amount of time to go pick the part. It's a busy warehouse to get the order, go out to pick the part. Okay, great. Took me 10 more minutes. I'm already looking at 25 minutes, probably almost a half hour out of my 2 hours that I've wasted because I've done things manually. In terms of 90-minute deliveries, there would be no way we could make it in 90 minutes in Japan, traveling, and especially out of the main cities, as it's very congested. There'd be no way we could do 90-minute deliveries without a B2B integration. We need the information from the customer as soon as it's placed in their system in order to even have a shot to do this. And the great thing about the B2B integration is that we do perform at 90 minutes on time in Japan, hundreds of orders a month, and 100% on time delivery. It's great. We've been, the business team has been lauded for their performance by the customer numerous times. So in terms of the technical side, we do what we can to support the business, and then of course the business has to take everything on themselves and still perform, right? So that's kudos to the business for getting all these deliveries on time. So if you think about that and you say, okay, well, that's great. And now I get it. And I get the part about, I need the information there real time. To my service contracts could be anything from 90 minutes or they could be an hour or 2 hours or 4 hours or same day, etc. But I also have an issue in terms of I need to coordinate my technician to my part that's being driven to the location. So what does that mean? Typically in these service contracts, I have a technician that needs to get to the site to do some diagnosis, and they have to have the parts delivered to them. I can't just randomly say, hey, the part's going to be there sometime within the next 4 hours, and you have a technician sitting there for 4 hours waiting. And of course, as luck would have it, you're probably going to end up at the end of the 4 hours, technician receiving the part. So I can't afford to have my technicians just sitting waiting idly by all day long because we have a lot of services to support. So I need to coordinate my technicians with parts at the same time. So if I was trying to do this manually, and people have tried that for for quite some time, it's extremely difficult. So one of the key things, again, about B2B integrations is what? Is communicating the information efficiently and back and forth. So that means not only am I receiving information from the customer and I need to ship a part somewhere and they're telling me that, hey, the technician's going to be there at 10:42, that's when I need you to get the part there. I am then replying to you saying that, yes, I can be there at 10:42. And I'll be able to meet your technician, and he can schedule his time, and then he could be in and out of that location and on to the next location, and making use of his time efficiently. Again, with messaging, we then can systemically update that time and say, the driver's not going to be there till 10:45, 10:46, 10:47. That then immediately updates the technician that the driver's going to be a little bit late. So he can then do what he needs to do. Maybe he's going to make some phone calls. Maybe he's got some work to do that it can catch up on because he's got 10 minutes, free time, so to speak. So in terms of the timing and the accuracy, which we talked about, data integrity, and then we talk about being able to support warranty contracts, and then we talk about being able to support technicians' time, which is valuable in terms of their schedule for the day. B2B is basically the only way that you could do this successfully and make the time for everyone, including the drivers, the technicians, the customer, as well as Flash, efficient.
Absolutely. So the last one, and there isn't any bullets behind this because you guys have heard quite a few of the things that you might have been hearing triggers to, right? So you have idle technician time, you have inventory management accuracy. You've got one thing that we didn't even touch on yet either is just Dennis talked a little bit ago about, having the serial numbers, and again, having reporting. That all ties back to trade compliance, right? So you've got your shipping in between each different country. Each country has different, trade compliance regulations, different taxes you need to pay, various things like that. So of course, having the accuracy, that's provided by a B2B system also allows you to be paying the correct amount of duties, VATs, and other things like that. Allows you to track better against that. So those are some of the core things, but in a nutshell, Dennis has seen this time and time and time again with his integrations of how it actually puts dollars back in the pockets. Dennis?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Ryan, and that's definitely for sure. So we look at the services that we provide, whether it's call services, taking calls directly, as well as another service. You can reduce the cost in your business and the customer business tremendously by relying on Flash for a number of things. And not only is it through B2B integrations, which is critical to be able to provide the efficiencies, and we talked about scalability and labor costs, etc. There are also efficiencies in terms of what Brian was talking to in IOR, EOR services and visibility and moving product from the United States internationally, and you're going through brokers in, let's call it, say, EMEA, and you're going through Amsterdam brokerage, and you're shipping to Paris and Germany, etc., and providing the information systemically and using the compliance services that Flash provides in terms of making sure that the commercial invoices are produced properly with the proper information, ECCN codes, harmonized codes. These are all part of B2B integration. So if we look at overall B2B integrations, so we're talking about call centers, we're talking about saving money in call centers. There are also inventory management groups that exist within companies, right? So I need lots of inventory management folks to manage my information, to manage my harmonized codes, my compliance information, right? ECCN codes, my dollar values that need to be updated into systems. Again, B2B integrations come into play in terms of there's a lot of B2B messages that can be utilized, including MPL updates. So MPL updates automates the information that says, okay, now I've added 10 new parts to my system. I have to call Flash. I have to give them the information. They have to upload it to their system. Hey, daily the values are changing on my product. I have to have someone get all those changes, contact Flash, send over a spreadsheet. Maybe they'll update it manually, etc. Again, using B2b messaging for MPL updates is also time saving and cost savings. Again, that's another labor area that you can pick up savings from. And then, of course, the simple fact when you talk about data integrity and keeping information proper, you can get fined quite heavily by having the wrong information and someone typing in the wrong information into any commercial invoice. So systemic data passing back and forth is the most efficient way to do that, and the best chance that you have of making sure that you can keep the data integrity intact. Again, it's I don't want to say it's hard to imagine, but if you look at it from a Flash perspective and what we provide to the customer, it's not just necessarily the fact that we as a vendor consider this a great opportunity for us to be scalable. What we're providing to the customer, and what I would always want to stress to the customer, is that the services and the technology that I'm assisting with and the advice that I'm providing is not just Flash advice. It's advice for you as a company, and what we will always do is provide you the advice as a company that you could utilize with any vendor. So this is not so much about just, hey, what can Flash do, but in terms of providing you information and the knowledge that we have from doing this for so many years, providing you the best opportunity to be efficient, and that could apply to you across your supply chain with any other vendors.
Absolutely. So that really concludes our jam session today, guys. So if there's any other final questions, we can take them now. And, you know, if you want to just write them, like I said, personally, I know many of you received an email from us. You can always reply to that. You can always reach out to us directly any way you need to. We'll make sure, of course, at the end of this, we'll send you guys a follow-up email with Dennis's information. So if you have any specific questions for him, of course, the presentation itself will be in there, the recording will be in there, things like that. So you guys will always have access to this. And as usual, we always appreciate your time that you spend with us. And of course, we're here to serve any of your service supply chain needs. So thank you very much and have a wonderful day.
Fantastic. Thank you.